All right, here we go. We're doing When is a War Not a War? You will find the questions, the reading, everything you need. All right, here we go. Hopefully you'll be able to see me because I'm going to be way over here at some point in time, and you probably won't, but I will talk loud. The outlook was grim for South Korea. The small battered forces of ROK, which is the South Korean soldiers, held out against communist forces. Okay, the defenders clung to the corner of Southeast Korea. They were all that stopped the massive North Korean army from taking the entire Korean peninsula. So they came across hot and heavy. They had built, North Korea, with Russia's help, had been building up their army. South Korea, not so much. So they did not really have that strong of an army to help stop this invasion. So when North Korea came across, it took them by surprise, and so basically they fled. I mean, they had to retreat pretty rapidly. Okay. The U.S. president was, of course, Truman. And he was actually faced with a pretty big problem here. What could be done to prevent the Republic of South Korea from falling completely to the communists? Okay, and that was the big fear at this point in time. We did not want to see, because communism is taking over a lot of Southeast Asia right now, and we're wanting to protect Japan. We're wanting to protect South Korea. We're trying to stop communism from spreading throughout the world. Is exactly what's going on. Okay. So it wasn't as simple as declaring war on North Korea and letting them have it. If it had just been the United States against North Korea, no contest. Okay, we could have probably gone in and beaten them fairly quickly because our military was pretty strong at this point in time. We had maintained our military strength pretty well. Our economy is going well. I mean, we're a world power. We're the richest nation in the world at this point in time. A lot of good stuff is going on. So that little half of peninsula you wouldn't have thought would probably been able to put up a really, really vicious fight against us at this time. Okay?
Are we still world power, sir?
We are considered a world power, but we're one of many now.
Russia, China.
China, not Korea. China. We have a number. All right, so the U.S. was just bouncing back from a long, costly struggle of World War II. And even worse was the problem of Koreans' touchy neighbors. Okay, this is really the big thing that he's got to look out for. China and Russia had been allies of the U.S. in World War II, but since then, what was known as the Cold War, we did not trust them, they did not trust us. Okay? They were pretty sure we were trying to take over the world. We were pretty sure they were going to try to take over the world. So the U.S. against China and Russia.
Oh.
Okay?
Everyone.
So they're all kind of afraid of each other. Okay? The only thing China and Russia has in common is they're both communism. Okay, they're both under communist dictators, so they have something in common. They don't like each other either, really. But they kind of share the same philosophy.
Aren't we allies though with China and Russia?
We are.
Or allies?
We are, and we were here. But they were still
tension.
Tension. People, they were still afraid of each other.
Hey, that makes
Okay?
sense.
But since then had become the Cold War, okay, a quite deadly battle of fear and distrust had opened deep chasm, which means people have strong differences, basically what that means. It also means rocks and minerals in science, but in history it means strong differences in people. Between the U.S. and two giant communist nations, hanging by a thread over this chasm was the divided nation of Korea. Okay. Now, the United Nations had been kind of like the foster parent to South Korea. Russia had been the foster parent of North Korea, if you would, kind of helping to look after them. And China and Russia cheer now as North Korea armies actually invades South Korea. They're on the sideline, and they're pretty excited about it because they want to see the entire peninsula become communism. Okay? They weren't about to stand still if the U.S. launches an all-out war against North Korea. Okay, and Truman he knows this, and he knows that if if the U.S. goes in and attacks North Korea,
They're gonna attack us.
then China and Russia are going to get involved, and if they get involved, then guess what? Britain's going to get involved. France is going to get all of our allies are going to start getting involved, and it could escalate into World War III, and nobody wants that. Okay, nobody wants that.
Do you
Okay.
think eventually a country will try to take over the world again?
Yeah.
Something dumb and
It,
then
it wouldn't surprise me. Hopefully it'll be one of these little crazy countries. It won't be us. We're okay.
You get demolished.
It doesn't matter who it might be. You can't look into the future. So
It might be someone.
okay.
You can China.
Yeah. Basically. All right. Truman calculated that too forceful response by the U.S. to the Korean crisis would bring the two mega nations to North Korea's aid. He's talking about Russia and China here. That, he felt, would trigger World War III. World War II had ended with the atomic bomb being dropped by Truman's orders on Japan, so the risk of nuclear war now lurked at every conflict now. Once you have a weapon that is capable of destroying the world, it becomes easier, and you've already used it once, it becomes easier to use it. And again, no one wants that, because guess who now has also developed nuclear weapons? Russia. So Russia has them, we have them, and if we was to drop a nuclear weapon on North Korea, that's right in the back door of China and Russia. They're not going to like that. Okay? So they're going to respond with that, probably with a nuclear weapon. Truman knew this, so that was not an option. He had to back off of that real fast. Although, it was probably a consideration at one point in time. That was not the wise decision to make. Okay?
He seems like he had a bunch of stuff happening and he was
He
trying
had
to make
a lot
that.
of stuff going on. I can appreciate him not wanting to be president again.
Like that stress.
He's like, I've had enough.
The president is a very stressful job if you do it correctly.
Even if you do it for like more.
Okay? To meet the crisis of the moment, Truman quietly ordered the U.S. military aid to besiege South Korea. At the same time, he went to the UN and asked them to intervene in the crisis. Okay? So the involvement of the UN would kind of blunt the United States going in, because they're going in under the UN banner. It's not America attacking North Korea. It's the UN going in with a peacekeeping troops, okay, from various countries. Now, the U.S. is the main supplier of equipment and personnel, but you've got Great Britain shows up, the Turks, Canada sends people over, Australia. You got a lot of countries sends troops in. No one sends more than us, of course, because we're the bigger of all these nations. Okay, but that happens. Okay, so hours after North Korea's invasion, the UN leaders call for North Korea, calls them an aggressor, and they plan to rescue South Korea. So they issue a call for help from member nations. U.S., of course, again, supplies and equipment went to South Korea under the UN banner. Other countries also lend support to the emergency action as well. So it kind of is not just the U.S. going in. It's basically the world, the UN is going in, okay, United Nations. So it's kind of instead of looking like we're picking a fight with Russia and China, it looks like we're going in to try to help maintain peace, okay? The UN intervention was called a police action, okay? Well, it doesn't sound nearly as hostile as war. Now, under the U.S. Constitution, you also got to remember this. A president has to get Congress to declare war. The president cannot declare war. He goes to Congress and asks them to declare war, and then they vote on it, and they may or they may not, okay? So the president can't declare war. So, and if they do, sometimes it can take a while, okay? But for a police action, the protocol wasn't real clear. The shortcut was handy for a president because he just sent them in. Truman sent troops in without Congress approval. And that was one of the first times that had ever happened. Now, since then, he's kind of set precedent. They all now have sent troops in. Vietnam never went through Congress. It went strictly, the president said, yeah, we're going to send troops in. Afghanistan right now, the president, yep, we're going to send troops in. Okay, Congress votes to help fund it, but they've never voted whether or not to send the troops in because it's not war. War has never been declared. Since World War II, the United States has not declared war on anyone else. We've been in fights ever since then, but we haven't declared war. Yeah, only Congress can declare war.
So Congress was the first
Okay.
people who declared war in
Yeah.
World War II.
So anyhow, but it eliminates the serious and lengthy process of formal declaration by Congress. But Truman sent the U.S. military to Korea without seeking approval. He later was accused of violating the Constitution because the Constitution is set up where one guy cannot just do all this stuff. That's why you have the three branches of government, checks and balances. Okay, so he was accused of violating the Constitution because he bypassed Congress.
If there's a loophole.
Okay, there was a loophole. You're exactly right. All right. In any case, General Douglas MacArthur was named the Commander-in-Chief of the UN operations in North Korea, or in South Korea, excuse me. Okay? His support troops included the U.S. 8th Army. They joined the ROK forces. Remember, that was the South Korean troops. Barely hanging on to the south. Okay? And I'm going to show you over here in just a second what we're talking about when we said barely hanging on to the south and how this works out. Okay? Got to move it up again. We're almost there. Another 2.5 hours we'll be all done. I'm just kidding. All right. At first, sending the troops in didn't really look like it helped a whole lot. Because remember, North Korea came through. They had pushed the South Korean troops way down.
Did they shoot any civilians?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Number 7, A and D aren't the same exact thing.
No, they're not. Look closely.
All right.
One says US,
The huge numbers of North Korean troops had pushed the U.S. and the ROK units back down to a tiny area around the city of Pusan, which is down almost in the water, way down south. The defenders dug in behind a line that they called the Pusan perimeter. There the UN troops hung on to a mere 10% of the peninsula. Okay, North Korea had taken over 90% of that peninsula.
Of all Korea.
Of all Korea. Okay, the UN and the American troops are holding on to 10% of it. That's all they've got right now. Okay, okay. But this is where it talks about how the time was right for a brilliant tactical move, and it was General MacArthur who supplied the solution. The commander sent a landing force into Incheon, which is actually way up north. Okay? Not way up north, but it's right up on the line at the 30th parallel. Okay, it's on up that way. Okay? He sent in troops. Okay? And he used the peninsula he used water to get them up there. Okay? So he's far behind now the North Korean front line. The front line is always ever how far the enemy has pushed. Okay? If they pushed halfway down into South Korea, that becomes the front line. Okay? They are actually further down. So he comes in behind the North Korean troops is what he does. Okay? It was a gambler's move, bold and risky, but the payoff was handsome. The UN troops faced mild resistance when they landed. They took the beach and they pushed on. They're coming south now. Okay, and they're coming in behind the North Korean troops. Okay, so you got the U.S. troops down here fighting this way, and you got the other ones coming in fighting this way. So we kind of got them
Looking in the wrong
sandwiched in.
direction.
Okay? The North Korean supply lines were cut. Okay, and anytime you can cut your enemy's supply line,
You
they
basically,
can't get ammo, they can't get equipment, they can't get food. That's a good thing. Okay, that's a real good thing.
Not for them, but.
Not for you, not for them, but for the other team. Okay, the South Korean capital of Seoul was wrestled away from the enemy's hand. Supply lines are cut. Communist forces was isolated now in enemy territory, so they began to pull back. The ROK and the U.S. troops from Busan began to push forward, okay, to join the forces that had landed at Incheon. So the North Koreans suddenly become in a full retreat. They are now running for their lives, trying to get back to North Korea. They're trying to get back across the line, okay?
It's crazy that one attack move made that.
That's it. One tactical move, but it was a gutsy move.
yeah.
Okay.
Because if those troops were not faster.
Yep. The invasion force was driven back across the 38th parallel. The ROK and the UN forces chased the routed communists far up into North Korea. It was now South Korea that was enjoying the prospect of taking back the other half of the Korean peninsula. Okay? The push north was spurred on by the thoughts of rescuing POWs, as prisoners of war, in case you didn't know. It was also fueled by the possibility of freeing South Korea from the communists. Okay? Now, this is my handy dandy map. I don't know if you can see that or not. I drew that out this morning. I'll look backward to you. China's up here, okay? I'll try to get here so you can see me point. Okay. This is tricky. Okay, here we go. This is North Korea, okay? This is South Korea. They had pushed the troops down to Busan, down in here, okay? 10% of the peninsula is all that the UN troops and the American troops have. MacArthur sends them up to here. This is where they come out and around into here. And they come in, they don't face a whole lot of resistance here, and they start pushing this way. And these troops starts pushing this way, okay? And by doing that, they cut off the supply line because all of a sudden the front lines are down here. Well, the front lines are now moving because they're being backdoored, if you would, okay? So they're being attacked all the way around. And they've got no place to go other than back up north. Okay, so they make a run for it, and they do make it, but then the UN troops and the U.S. troops actually comes into North Korea, and we have them pushed way back at this point in time, okay? And then things heats up and gets ugly yet again, okay? But that's another day and another lesson, okay. All right, hope you found that somewhat interesting, and we will talk to you later.